we just line up their story and we say, okay, what parts of this don't fit that person? And for young guys, I always say, you in 20 years is your goal. That's your role model. That's your person. That's the one that's not going to let you down, but you also have to earn becoming him.
All right. So we were just having a great conversation and I realized we hadn't hit the record button. So I've hit the record button and here we are. Kyree, welcome to the call.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
It's good to have you here. So we were just jamming about snow and sickness and mountains and not having snow or being in the snow. And keep talking me through your background. Let's go back and talk a little bit about you here in the first few minutes so people can get an invite to understand who you are.
Yeah. So I'm from Northern California. I grew up about 45 minutes outside of San Francisco. I played Division I football in college. I played college in Idaho, the University of Idaho. And then I live in Arizona now. So I started my marketing company 2015 in November. Moved down here beginning of 2016 with my old business partner and never looked back.
Now, how far is north of San Fran? Because I grew up in the Southern Oregon Valley, like just above the border. So where we consider north of San Fran could be in the like middle of the woods area of northern.
Yeah. No, I was east of San Francisco. I don't know if I said north earlier, but I was about 45 minutes east. But my family's from Salem, Oregon.
Oh, from Salem, Oregon. Okay, yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, well, Grants Pass. My grandpa was born in Grants Pass, but grew up in Salem.
I grew up in Medford.
Yeah.
So I didn't even realize. Yeah. Did you ever have any stomping grounds around? Were you around there?
Yeah, my great-grandparents stayed up there, and my grandfather's side of the family stayed up there. Okay. So we'd go up winters, holidays, weddings, funerals. Yeah, spent a lot of time up there.
Crazy. Yeah, we probably circled each other. I grew up in the, late 80s into 90s, and by the time I graduated in 94, I left to go to Iowa, but I was in that time frame, so we must have been.
I was born.
Yeah, not that old.
I was born in 94.
No, we're not talking age. That wasn't part of the conversation. But I'm glad to have you on here because you're a great guy, and especially the type of work that you do. And I want to get into some of that as we get going. And of course, as we talk, we can learn more about who you are. But you're kind of a unique guy. You work specifically in the area of supporting a younger generation of men. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I think it started early. I didn't notice it at the time, but I think I got the message pretty early that I was going to have to teach myself what it looked like to be a man. My dad was there, but not really there, had us every few weekends. But, movies raised me. Movies were pretty much my dad at the time. And I remember it being around, it was probably around first or second grade. I had this project at school that I was super excited. My dad's 6'8". So it was always like the coolest thing in the world to have my dad show up to school to pick us up. Rarely ever did. But like this project was going to be the thing. I got to show off my gigantic dad he really looks like Shaquille O'Neal to my classmates. So I was super excited. Didn't show up. Sitting there all day. Maybe he's late. Maybe he overslept. Maybe his car broke down. Didn't show up. And he came over a few days later to apologize, took me for a walk and, took the apology. I was 6 or 7. But I went back home and my mom told me, I don't even remember this part, but my mom told me, she said, I walked in the door and I just said, Mom, I don't think Dad, I think he said that his alarm clock broke. I was like, I don't think Dad's alarm clock broke. I don't think his alarm clock really ever breaks. I don't think his car really breaks down. I just don't think he remembered. I don't think he really cared. And I think that was probably one of the first things that got that in my head of like, okay, this isn't the guy who's going to show me how to do it. And I think as I got older, I started looking, coaches, teachers, friends, fathers. Okay, who's going to be a good model for this? And a lot of people I would look up to and then I would get let down. They would show that they were human and I expected them not to be. And that's part of that's on me. But I started looking at like, I can take pieces from different people. I like how this guy handles his finances. I like how this guy interacts with his kids. I like how this guy interacts with his wife. And I just wanted to start building that picture. What does this man that I'm looking to become look like? At 19, I started interviewing people. I've interviewed over 1,000 people now. I just wanted to get as clear of a view as possible of what makes us tick. Why do we do the things we do? What makes us good at something? What makes us bad at something? Just how do I view myself and the world around me and try to grasp it for myself? But also I wanted to help people and I knew I couldn't live faster. I was 19. I can't help as much as I would like to, but what I can do is I can absorb. I can just gather as much information as possible and hopefully what needs to stick will stick. And I'll be able to help people, not just pulling from my own experience, but like the stories floating around in my head of other people. I've interviewed any type of person you could think of. I did 65 end of life interviews at a senior home. I would walk in and, Frank, who I had interviewed 2 days before, is not here anymore. So I started realizing that for some of these people, like, I was the last genuine conversation they were going to have. And it molded how I viewed them. It molded how I viewed myself and just what I wanted to pull from these conversations. And the hope was to carry on what these people were able to teach me into the people that I was going to be able to teach.
Yeah, man, that is incredible. I've never heard a story like that before. There's just there's a genuine aspect to what you're saying, really getting to know people for who they are in an area in which they can't really do anything for you, which is powerful. It's a powerful learning tool. How did that shape you? I mean, you've obviously, without a father figure, went and learned how to be a guy, for lack of a better way of saying it. How is that helping to shape what you're doing with these young men now? Because I know we can make fun of the 18 to the 21, the 34. It's pretty easy to make fun of them these days. I'm sorry, it just is. But it's not that they haven't helped themselves along. And I know some of the people that you work with, and I've actually watched them shape in the last year, which is, I think, kudos obviously to you. But what's kind of the typical thing you're seeing nowadays with guys that are struggling with the similar type of masculine issues, demasculation issues, or just their ability to operate in the world? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that most men operate from an extreme of one or the other side of the spectrum that I would call for masculinity. It's either emotional, soft, I just want to be loved, and I'm willing to, unfortunately, trade respect for love over the course of years, and I now become this person who feels beaten down and trodden on. And then we have the other side where I think a lot of them have made the same trade in the opposite direction. I've traded love for respect. I've probably been hurt in the past, and it's made me cold. It's made me a little bit apathetic. It's made me go to the extreme of like the red-pilled type of world, to the point where I don't have access to genuine emotion anymore. I don't have access to happiness. And I think that achievement is the ultimate goal in my life. And I find that both of those men are missing a huge piece of the puzzle, but they are easy to demonize the other side. And that makes them never want to find what that middle ground looks like or what that gray area looks like. Yeah, no,
that's really well said. What do you see as some of the trends maybe going into this year, some of the stuff you're dealing with that group, that demographic and masculinity? I guess, there's a phrase I was thinking of a minute ago while you were talking, and it was toxic masculinity. Is there legitimacy to that?
So I think so, but I don't like the name. To me, masculinity at its core can't be toxic because of what I would view as the traits that come along with being a masculine man. As long as it's well-rounded, to me, it looks like a lack of masculinity. It looks like a perversion of masculinity that creates what we would view as toxic. But to me, the answer is become more well-rounded masculine. The point isn't to become less masculine.
Interesting. Explain what you mean by that. Like when you say more well-rounded masculine, what does that mean?
Yeah. So to us, we look at masculine as hard. I can face anything. I can tackle anything. I can handle anything. And I think the thing that it ignores is oftentimes the emotional side, especially the emotional intelligence side. It's the ability to have empathy for other people. It's the ability to have softness in your voice, in your actions, in your interactions with especially the women in your life. And I think that's a lot of times what creates the callous that a lot of, especially young men that I work with, are feeling. It's a callous, it's a cold, it's a Viktor Frankl from Man's Search for Meaning calls it an existential vacuum. If this thing is devoid of meaning, it is naturally going to suck in everything around it, which is porn, alcohol, sex, whatever else we want to tack on there.
Whatever coping mechanism.
Yeah. It's anything around you when you don't have it inside of you. So my job is to help build up the foundation internally so that I'm much less susceptible to what happens around me.
And it sounds like there's a pretty big need for this. Am I wrong?
Yes.
I mean, obviously you see it more than I do in terms of the aspects of the people you work with and continuation. The last couple of years have been a strain. How has that affected the way you've done business and the kind of guys and stuff you're dealing with?
Yeah, it's maximized it to the type of guys that I've been working with. There's certain people who have more money than they've ever had, so they can afford to work with me. And oftentimes I found those are the guys who need it the most. Those are the guys who they have the business, they bought the car, they did the thing, and they still lay in bed and feel empty, and they don't know why. And they haven't, what they thought was going to make them happy They now have and it now doesn't. And now what? Let's say I've spent, 5, 10, 15 years working toward this thing and saying, okay, once I have the 7 figures, once I'm able to buy the Bentley, once I'm able to do this thing, then happiness is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then they get there and it's empty. And I think that's what creates that existential crisis that a lot of guys go through.
The emptiness is what? Relationships. What fills that void?
Oh, I think it starts off with yourself. So I think we can only give to other people as deeply as we feel the thing for ourselves. Same thing for love, for empathy, for anything else, for understanding. I can't love you more than I love myself. I'm incapable of doing that. And so sometimes it looks like relationships, but oftentimes it actually starts off with how do I feel about me? And it's not how do I feel about me when you're looking at me on Instagram. It's how do I feel about me when I'm laying in bed alone at night, when I don't have the distraction and I'm just left with my thoughts.
Yeah, that's powerful. Now, as a dad of a daughter, how has that changed your perception? Has it changed your viewpoints? Has it changed your thinking? Is it adjusting? How is it dealing with a new daughter?
It's insane. I would say the best way to put it is it's put a new film or a lens over how I look at everything. I can't speak to my male clients and not think about, would this be the type of man I would want my daughter to entertain, or that I would want to be impressed, or my daughter to be impressed by? And then the women I work with, are these the boundaries and standards that I'm looking to have my daughter set for herself so that she's not wooed by the guy driving the Mustang and that he's the greatest thing in the world?
Or she's not soft enough to allow him to be the man.
Yeah.
Which is the other half of the coin, right? You deal with feminine entrepreneurs or women who are too masculine, right? I think it's what you told me before.
Yeah. Oftentimes
they're the other
they're
half of that coin.
High achievers and they've totally stifled their ability to be feminine.
Interesting. Go unpack that a little bit because that dropped like a thud just now. For anybody listening,
well, I think
we're not here to offend anybody, clearly, but there's a lot of truth.
Well, I mean, my literal purpose on this world is to help people, but I can't help them unless I tell them the truth. So
tell the truth. That's right.
I think achievement is incredibly masculine. I think a lot of you look at high achieving women, let's say outside of entrepreneurship, but in the career field, you have to go into male dominated places. And then how do you ascend that hierarchy is you become more competent and you become more like the group. More like the group is more masculine naturally. Achievement looks more masculine. And so I think a lot of these women start ingraining those ideas of I have to be masculine in order to be powerful, in order to be respected, in order to be taken seriously. And what they don't see is the years of not allowing themselves to feel or be or embody femininity along that path. Until I think something happens, maybe it's their biological clock, maybe they get into a relationship and realize, oh, I also want to be a wife and a mother, and I don't know how to do any of that. And I also don't know how to allow a man into my life. So I keep going for, most of the time, weak men that I wake up one morning and wonder why I hate him. He's the nicest guy in the world. I get it all the time from women. Oh, but he's such a nice guy. That's why you feel bad for wanting to eat him alive. You can't understand why you don't respect him. You can't understand why you loathe him internally. Yeah.
Because he's not operating at the same level as you.
He can't. And so what they do though, because they're like, okay, I'm more masculine, I just need a more effeminate man. And I think the answer is go find a man who's more masculine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's hard. I think they have it backwards. I think my diagnosis is always go find a more masculine man than you. Where when you start being masculine to him, you get the weird look. You get what are we doing? And I think
I respect that because it's balance of power. I get it, right? After being married for 15 years now, there's been a balance of power shift in our house. I have 5 women in my house. So the balance of power has shifted me in some degree. But with my wife, who was an RN and very driven and was going to go be an NP and get her, doctorate and do this kind of stuff, she decided to be she says I'm just a stay-at-home mom now. But we have changed that role and shifted willingly together, allowing me to take the stronger lead role in the family and the financial lead role and the provider lead role while she's the CEO of the household. Like whatever she needs, whatever the kids want, whatever school books, whatever's providing for the house, I just pay for the credit card bills, right? Because she manages it. She's trustworthy and she does what she needs to do. I find that to be not the normal. I find that to be a standard of imbalance in our culture. What do you say about that?
I think when I look at masculine, let's call it masculine and feminine dynamics without getting super, woo-woo spirituality into it. But I think that there is an energy that we naturally carry. We both have both. We have masculine and feminine, but you always have something that leads. And I think the masculine is supposed to provide and the feminine is supposed to amplify. And so when I bring home money, when I bring home whatever we have from the outside world, she gets to now amplify that. If I buy my house, she gets to make it my home. When I bring home money, she gets to create our life with what I'm bringing home. And I think the job is to amplify. I think the job is for me to provide and for her to amplify. This is also on the other side of the table. When I hear men, I hear a lot of men's podcasts going to women. What do you bring to the table? If I provide the money, if I provide this, what do you bring to the table? And I'm like,
not a great start to the combo.
That's a man who's never thought of this. That's a man who believes that she needs to bring something extra to the table that you don't have. What you're doing is you're uncovering your deficiencies that you may not even recognize.
Your weaknesses. No doubt about it. Yeah. That isn't going to bring genuine love and compassion in a relationship.
Never. I don't need her to bring anything to the table. I need her to bring her. Her bringing her and the best of her makes my family work.
How much is this driven by some kind of narrative? Like when you break it down and get away from some of the things maybe they're ingrained in, do you pull them out of the world? Like how far do you break them back before they get to be rebuilt? Because it's almost like a training camp. You're basically kind of breaking them down and building them back up. Am I wrong?
I have to break down your reality first. So we start focusing on the stories you've told yourself. So as I listen to my clients and as they're talking to me, I start compiling the stories that they're telling themselves that don't serve the person they tell me they want to be. So our first session is an analysis of yourself. And at the end of it, you come to a very difficult realization about yourself that I purposely put it in there. It's practice one of my mentors did with me. And I think once we are able to say, this is who you say you want to be. My job now is not to make you a copy of me, which is what I think most coaches are doing. My job is to make you more of this thing that you tell me you want to be. And so we just line up their story and we say, okay, what parts of this don't fit that person? And for young guys, I always say, you in 20 years is your goal. That's your role model. That's your person. That's the one that's not going to let you down, but you also have to earn becoming him. And so let's line up these random things in your life, or that podcast you listened to, or that book you read, or that red pill thing that you did. Does that serve who you're looking to become and what you're looking to have in your life? And if the answer is no, change the story. And we start rewriting the narrative.
That's amazing. And I appreciate what you're doing on so many levels. As a guy who obviously tried to learn how to become a dad, frankly, as I'm hearing you talk, and without that male response and learning what, positive masculinity looks like. As a dad with daughters, it's good to hear that there are other people out there who are training men to become good men. It's one of the things I worry about, quite honestly, with my daughters as I look into the world. Who are they going to marry? What kind of men are going to be left that will lead, right? Lead with positive energy and not just masculine force, or they won't be simply turned into the full masculinity men who have no empathy and compassion for them as women. It's a balance, and I appreciate guys like you that are out there doing that. Because you're training a generation of people, I think, to be balanced, right?
Thank you. It's crazy now for me to look at, I change my clients with my words, but I can't mold my daughter with my words. Now, they may play a part, but my actions are going to show her what to expect from another man by how I treat her, by how I treat my fiance, my female clients, the women around us in the world. I have to just be a walking representation of what you should expect later on in your life. And it's a humbling thing. It's a deep responsibility, but it doesn't feel negatively obligatory. It feels like this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, man, as a man of a household leading a bunch of women, as it turns out, it's because that was my lot in life, which is cool because as I look back on it now, and I've prayed once upon a time to be surrounded by beautiful women. I just wasn't very specific as to when that would occur in my life, but it has occurred now. And now I realize that's how I was always meant to be. Mm-hmm. That's how I was engineered. That's how I was built. And it's okay. People don't always want to accept certain, I guess alignments with their life. You can call it spirituality or godliness. You can call it, whatever you want. And we tend to want to fight those things, I think. And what you're trying to do is get people out of their own way and to just accept that there's a goodness in who they are and that they can become better than where they are now. And they can stop listening to the lies in their heads. and in other places. And that's extremely powerful what you're doing, Kyree. So how do people get a hold of you, my friend? If they want to learn, if they're in that demographic, if you're feeling beat down by the world and you want to learn how to become a stronger man in this world, how do they get hold of you?
My Facebook, if they're connected with you, they can find me, Kyree Oliver, on your Facebook. My Instagram is just at Kyree, Kyree. Facebook's where I post most of my content. I'm kind of on Instagram. I'm getting onto Twitter. I just had a call with the guy who's running my Twitter yesterday. I think it's just at Kyree Oliver as well. So any platform, questions, shoot me a message. If you send me a friend request, shoot me a message, because otherwise I won't look at it.
Well, I thank you for coming on today and sharing that information, and I hope my listeners enjoyed it as well. And I just appreciate you so much for what you're doing, brother.
Thank you again, man. I appreciate it.